we got the manual, and we're just going to review important information that all CTCs and principals should know. So everybody received a copy of the standalone field test instructions in the email. If you'd like to take it out at this time and follow along, that would be great. As you can see right here are the table of contents, and the first page reviews general information. And as you know, there is a redesign that's happening for the STAR test that will be implemented in 2022-2023. There are several components for this transition to the online assessments. They will be adding writing to the reading test. They will be capping the number of multiple choice questions, and they're going to be adding new item types. And this is why it's very important for TEA to have this standalone field test so that they can properly integrate these new components. This field test data will help the data that they're going to be receiving from the field test will build high quality assessments in the future. Please know that you will not be receiving any data from this field test. All it is going to be used for is to determine if these questions are appropriate for the upcoming tests. Students participating, it's very important that they use the online practice test to ensure that they're ready for the field test. They need to familiarize themselves with the online testing platform, play with the tools, see the types of questions. It's a great opportunity for them to interact with the interface so that on the day of the field test, they know exactly what to do and how to work the platform. I've provided the specific schedule already for you. The TEA does say that we can have the field test any day between February 7th and the 8th. Do know that this test is online only, and it will be we will be using Tide for this test, so everything needs to be loaded into Tide for participating students by January 31st. And most of your students are already there because of the BOY and so forth. So it does allow us to create a local schedule, and that's why we came up with February 8th for middle school and elementary, and also for 15th for high school. This first paragraph right here, it's very, very important to know that the test is not timed. But look at what it says. The test is not timed, but it is going to have to be limited to 5 hours. So we're going to do our very, very best to complete it within 5 hours. We should time it, but the students will only have the 5 hours. Now, extenuating circumstances, let's say the student takes 5 hours and 5 minutes. We're not going to ask them to log off, but TEA says that it should be limited to 5 hours. TEA also states that the students need to complete it on the same day. So if a student does get sick on testing day, they're not going to be able to come the next day to complete it. So we need to ask students to submit their test as if they feel like they're not going to come back from the nurse. We should schedule approximately 2.5 hours for the administration of the field test, but sometimes it may take a little bit longer. Field tests for math, science, and social studies include about 30 questions, and for RLA, they have a range of questions from 22 to 39 questions. Do know that these, within each specific grade or subject, online field test form may vary in the types of questions that they have. They may have multi-part, multi-select, drag and drop, hot text, short constructed response, or extended constructed response. Makeup testing is optional, but PSJA, we're only going to be testing on that one day. Eligibility. General eligibility requirements. So here it states that all students at a selected campus who is enrolled in the assigned grade or subject or course scheduled to take the corresponding STAR assessment in spring 2022 should participate in the standalone field test. This includes ELs and students who receive special education services unless a student requires an accommodation that is not available for the field test. Braille and ASL videos will not be available. For grades 3 ELs, LPAC decision is not required for the standalone field test. District personnel should use their educational expertise to appropriately assign grade 3 ELs to test English or Spanish, so that the LPAC doesn't have to be completed for the field test. So I'm going to read this upcoming information verbatim because this is very important. As you can see, I highlighted the whole information. For 3rd through 8th eligibility, it includes those students who are enrolled in the grade and receiving on grade level instruction for the grade and subject assigned to the field test. So 3rd graders take the 3rd grade test if your campus was selected to give that test. 4th graders a 4th grade test. 5th graders a 5th grade test. Remember, only if they were selected to give that test. Now the Spanish students, they have to participate, no ands, ifs, or buts. For 3rd through 8th, for students who are receiving above grade level instruction for the grade and subject assigned to the field test, regardless of their enrolled grade. 2 example scenarios are provided below. A student who is enrolled in grade 6 but receiving instruction in grade 7 mathematics will take the grade 7 mathematics field test if his or her campus has been assigned to a field grade 7 mathematics test. And these are for students who are receiving above grade level instruction, not on level, above grade level. So another example is if a student who is enrolled in grade 4 but receiving instruction in grade 5 mathematics will not take the grade 4 mathematics field test if his or her campus has been assigned to field test grade 4 mathematics. So we first have to determine who are our Spanish testers. Once you know who those Spanish testers are, very important. You already know that decision's been made for them. They test Spanish and that's it. Spanish reading. So our first step is going to be to verify who tests in Spanish reading, and right away that decision is done for you. They test Spanish reading, 1 test, and that's it. After that, if your campus was selected for another grade level, then you give that appropriate test to those students. A student cannot take 2 field tests. They only take 1. And if your campus was selected for math, 3rd grade math, any student in 3rd grade who is going to take the Spanish reading test, they do not participate in the math test because they will be taking the Spanish reading test. Okay. For the EOC assessments for Memorial and T-STEM, eligibility includes those students who are enrolled in and will complete the assigned course during the 2021-2022 school year, regardless of their enrolled grade. 2 example scenarios are provided below. A student who's enrolled in and completing instruction in biology in the spring 2022 will take the biology field test if his or her campus has been assigned to field test biology. A student who is enrolled in and completed instruction in U.S. history in the fall 2021 will take the U.S. history field test if his or her campus has been assigned to test U.S. history. So for EOC, it's a little bit more, it's black and white. If they're enrolled, in that course, they take that field test if the campus was selected or was assigned that field test. Okay, I'm going to stop right here to see if there's any questions on eligibility, because I know it gets a little bit, complicated. But to make things clear again, if your students take Spanish, they have Spanish reading for STAR, they have to field test Spanish reading and nothing else. That's it. Okay. Okay, I see that the questions have been answered in the chat. Okay, I'm going to continue then. Just if we have any questions, I know the ladies will also answer. And right here, this next slide tells you the specific requirements for the Spanish test. And they state that due to limited number of students who take the Spanish assessments, all LEAs that have students who will take the STAR Spanish reading test in the spring will be required to administer the Spanish reading test in 3rd, 4th, and 5th. To limit testing, students who take the Spanish reading field test in 3rd, 4th, and 5th will not be required to take English versions of the field test. And below are some scenarios. I'm just going to read Campus A and B. Campus A is selected for the English version of the 4th grade math field test. Student 1 is scheduled to take the English version of the STAR Grade 4 math test and the Spanish version of the STAR Grade 4 reading test. Student 1 does not have to participate in the English version of the Grade 4 math field test, but is required to participate in the Spanish version of the Grade 4 field test. So again, the Spanish trumps everything. They want Spanish data because it's very limited. Campus B is not selected for the English version of the field test, but Campus B has students who take the reading test in Spanish. So Campus B must administer the Spanish version of the reading field test to all eligible students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th. If your campus does not have any students who will be taking the STAR Spanish reading test in spring 2022, then your campus is not required to participate in the Spanish reading field test. But I think here in PSJA, I think we all have Spanish testers. I'm going to make a blanket statement. If that's not the case, please let us know. But I believe we all do have participants. Okay. Accessibility features and designated supports. During the administration, certain accessibility features may be provided based on student needs. These procedures and materials are available to a student who regularly benefits them during instruction. And I put it here in green. There is no need to document their use in Tide. Most online designated supports, like content and language supports, text-to-speech, and speech-to-text, are available for students who need them. However, Braille, refreshable Braille, and ASL videos are not available for students in the standalone field test. The decision to use these particular accommodations should be made on an individual basis and take into consideration the needs of the student, and they must routinely use these accommodations during classroom instruction and testing. And very important, updating a student's required documentation is not necessary for accommodations or for participation in the field test. We put a note here in Tide. Students with scratch paper accommodations will need their online attributes. Students with paper accommodations, I don't know why I read that scratch. Students with paper accommodations will need their online attributes to be turned on in Tide, because remember, right here for the field test, it's all online. There's very few students in elementary that receive paper. We may have a few in middle school, but if they do receive paper and they have those accommodations, they need to be turned on in Tide because they will be testing online, regardless if they're scheduled to take the paper test or not for STAR. Those accommodations need to be turned on. An example, It could be for the oral, switching oral paper to text to speech on time. What are the responsibilities of testing personnel? These instructions are intended to be used prior, during the online standalone field test. Testing coordinators should ensure that all your administrators receive a copy of these guidelines, because testing coordinators, technology staff, and test administrators will need to use these instructions to carry out their responsibilities. Campus testing coordinators should be on hand to answer questions during the administration. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of test security and confidentiality, and I'm going to go very fast through this because I know all of you have been already trained on security and confidentiality. But as you know, security and confidentiality is essential to this to the program to ensure fair and equal testing opportunities for all students. They use this data to assure educators, parents, and students and the public that results are meaningful and valid. Materials may contain secure test and valid. Materials may contain secure test content. Viewing, discussing, or recording of the confidential information is strictly prohibited. Test administrators who have permission to view secure test content in order to provide an approved designated support or as part of the program specific test administration process must be reminded that responding to test questions, recording the information, scoring, discussing is strictly prohibited. This field test, we need to treat it like STAR. It has the same procedures, it has the same security, it has the same confidentiality requirements. It also has the same training requirements. Test administrators, training on test security and administration procedure is required at least once. Annual test administrator training is strongly encouraged, especially for policies and procedures that have changed. The campus coordinator will schedule and conduct your training sessions before testing begins. Everybody who participates in the field test, that includes, our executive officers, that includes our principals, everybody, our test administrators, our CTCs, they must sign the oath of test security and confidentiality. So I know all the CTCs have already done so. I know the principals have already done so. I know I'm missing a few people, and I'll be reaching out to you so we can get you trained. But CTCs, please know that the oath must be signed after they receive their training. What is the summary of responsibilities for the testing coordinators? You need to be familiar with the test administration instructions. You need to review the TIDE user guides. Prepare administrators and technology staff to carry out their duties. Right here, very important, ensure that they have signed the test security oaths and more importantly, that they've been trained before they sign that test security oath. We need to identify our students who are going to participate and schedule. The scheduling has been done for you, right? But schedule the standalone field test. Set up sessions and print student tickets and be available to answer questions. Test administrators, they must prepare for the administration by reviewing these administration instructions. So before CTCs, you train your test administrators, make sure they have a copy of this so that they can have a little bit of time to review it before your training. They must review and sign their security oath. Coordinate with testing coordinator to ensure that the students have the necessary information they need to log in to their test sessions. Prepare the test environment, ensure proper testing procedures. Then they will administer the test, monitor it, and maintain test security. And this is really important. Ensure students have successfully submitted their field test by reviewing the confirmation screen on each student's your result page. Sorry about that. What must technology staff do? They must ensure that administrative rights are necessary for installing the software. We've already talked to Mr. Hector Rodriguez about ensuring that the icon is there. Dr. Davalos did send an email, I believe yesterday, for campuses to be submitting their work orders with time. That includes if you're missing icons, anything necessary for testing. Please submit your work orders starting now before it gets really, really busy. So technology staff at the high school, the CATs at the high school and the middle school, and CTCs working with their lab managers, make sure that you're ready, your technology is ready. Review and sign the security oath. Ensure that all testing software is properly installed, that computers are available, and the icon is added to the desktops or to the desktop, and that it's ready for testing and you've tried it out before the test day, because sometimes the computers need updates. And we must be available for assistance. Prepare the testing environment. Just like STAR, no element of the testing environment should hinder the student's performance. We must use the testing do not disturb sign. It is not necessary to conceal or remove instructional or reference material in the testing area, classrooms, or hallways unless they could provide assistance or are a direct source of answers for the subject area assessment being administered. Clocks do not have to be covered. Desks must be cleared. Administrators should make a determined effort to prevent students from seeing one another's monitors. So that could include spacing them out enough or putting those dividers in between them. Very important that there should be a headset for every student receiving text-to-speech or speech-to-text when multiple students are testing in the same room. A microphone should be enabled on the device for students receiving speech-to-text. So, test materials for the field test. No paper test booklets are going to be given during this field test. There's not going to be any paper. Test administrators for online administrations must ensure that the following required materials are available on the day of testing. CTCs, we must have the tickets. We must have scratch paper and graph paper if applicable, pencils or pens, dictionaries for these subjects right here. Please know that the dictionary tool is available in the online test. A calculator, one graphing calculator per student, but that too, the calculator tool is available on the online test. And one calculator for every 5 students. The graphing calculator and the regular calculator are available on the online test as well, and only for these subjects indicated in the instructions. Headsets for students receiving text-to-speech or speech-to-text when multiple students are tested in the room. A calculator must not be provided to a student in 3rd through 7th math assessments or any grade 5 science assessment unless the student meets the eligibility requirements, just like the STAR. You can refer to the STAR dictionary policy for more information. Reference materials and graph paper are available in the TDS, but CTCs, you can have paper versions of these materials. We are going to upload them to the SharePoint folder for easy reference, but you can also go under TIDE under General Resources to access them. If a student writes or makes notes on the test, on scratch paper or notes, they must be destroyed. Okay, online testing activities in TIDE. Ensure that students are registered in TIDE. A student must be registered in TIDE before the test administration window begins. The manual here states January 31st, but in all honesty, you can register a student the day of the test if you get a new student enrolled. So they're giving you January 31st so that because we need to verify the information. But in all honesty, if you get a new enrolled student, CTCs, we are able to enroll these kids in Tide for you. Ms. Karina Falcon will give you the document in which you need to fill out. But for all other students who are enrolled right now, they need to be enrolled by January 31st, and you must be verifying their information throughout to ensure that it is very, very accurate. For grades 3rd through 8th, students should have the correct grade indicated. It's very important that we verify the grade. For EOC testers, the end of course eligibility flag should be marked in the test attributes panel. And I know Ms. TSTEM and Memorial CTCs are here and they know exactly where this eligibility flag is, but if you need a little bit more help with that, we can definitely support you. We had a lot of practice in December, right, ladies? For above grade level testers in STAR, 3rd through 8th above grade flag should be marked in the test attribute panel. For Spanish RLA testers, presentation must be set to Spanish under the reading column in the test attributes panel. All these steps have been reviewed with CTCs in previous trainings. We are gonna put in the resources the step-by-step on how to do this in SharePoint. You can also use a Tide user guide for step-by-step instructions, and you can always call our wonderful assessment team, and we can definitely help you with that as well. So how do we plan? Because our campuses, I know I have a little bit of time, so I should hurry. I know that we are going to plan for students to practice, right, for this test. So the CTCs can practice using the test administrator practice site, and students can use the online practice test in the student practice site to get familiar with the online test system. To access it, you can click here or on your manual, or you can go to the test administrator practice site in Tide. You're going to determine the session duration, determine the test you need. Only tests that have been assigned to your school for the standalone field test are going to be available in the test administrator site. You're going to determine who needs to take the test and check the settings for students in Tide. Have plan a communication, a way to communicate the session IDs to our students. So most of us, they communicate the session to our test administrators. We write them out and have them ready for them when they pick up their test materials. So you can do that as well, or you type them out. Students will need to log in to the secure browser application and ensure that the latest version of the secure browser is being used. We must use the icon. No web version testing will be allowed, and I don't even think it's going to allow you to access it through the web version. So it must be used through the icon. And I spoke to Mr. Rodriguez today, and he has he does know that the most updated version needs to be installed in the computers. So if it is not, he will be working on that for the campuses. How do we create sessions? Testing personnel must create sessions in TDS. And as you remember, once you log into TDS, you click on the Create Sessions button. You specify the start date, the time, and the end time. I'm sorry, the time, the end date, the end time for each session. Ensure that session start and end dates and times are set within the testing window. So it's going to be pretty easy for the campuses because we've already determined that that day for you. So now it would be the time for you to determine it at your campus. You can you would add the date and the time right here. The date has been specifically already assigned. And as you can see right here, it's after. You will receive this page after you click on the create sessions. You'll receive the create and manage test sessions. Now, from the list of color-coded test categories, you're going to select the pink category for the standalone field test. So remember that the standalone field test will be in pink. And they've been very kind with us that they're only going to display the test or the groups available for the field test. So you don't have to worry about giving anybody the wrong field test. We just have to be very careful that we provide the opportunity for our Spanish testers. So make sure that we provide the Spanish testers the test first. And once you do that, then you can provide the other test that's going to be available for you. So I'll take Escobar as I'm sorry, Miss Kathy, but I'll use you as an example again. Escobar has 2, so you're going to see 2 only that you're going to be able to choose from. I believe Sorensen only had 1, so you're going to be able to pick from that only that Spanish 3rd through 5th grade test. The test selection window only displays test and test categories that you're going to be eligible for, or for the standalone field test, only tests that have been assigned to your campus will be available. If this does not, and this includes the Spanish 3rd through 5th RLA tests. If this does not match, like once you log in and it does not match to what the list I showed you on the PowerPoint says, please contact the assessment department. It must match. If you delete a test session before the session ends, students who are already logged into the test can continue, but others will be prevented from logging in. Specific instructions for creating test sessions can be found in the TDS User's Guide. We will be putting instructions also in our SharePoint, and you can call the assessment department for support. We'll be happy to help anybody that calls. Ensure that students that the test tickets are generated and printed before testing. It's very important that each student has a test ticket for the online test. The test ticket includes the student name and their TSDS ID. They need this information to be able to log into their test. These test tickets, please everybody, let's treat them like they are test booklets. They are secure. They must be kept in a locked storage. Student test tickets are available in type now. You and CTCs must print them at least before the test, not the day of testing, but at least 1 day before testing. But if I know our PSJA CTCs, they're going to be ready way before that. Campus coordinators, test administrators, and technology staff must generate print student test tickets at least 1 day before. Session IDs, which is also needed to log into the test ticket, is not included. So CTCs, we must communicate the session ID to our test administrators because they're going to need that session ID to log into their test. Student test tickets must be destroyed after the test is complete. For more information on printing test tickets, you can refer to the TIE User Guide. You can refer to the resources in SharePoint, or you can call us and we'll be more than happy to help you. How to monitor online administrations and ensure proper testing procedures. Test administrators must schedule or start the online test before students can log in. For directions to do that, you can go to the TDS manual. Test sessions must be conducted under the best possible conditions. Follow these procedures listed below to ensure that the security and confidentiality of the standalone field test is uniform throughout the administration. If a situation arises that you don't know how to resolve, contact your campus coordinator or the assessment department. Districts are required to have procedures in place to prevent the use of cell phones. All of you have submitted the cell phone procedure or policy. So as long as all the campuses are following that cell phone policy, we are complying by this requirement. So please make sure that when you train your teachers, you review it with them. A trained administrator must be present in each testing room. There must be at least one test administrator for every 30 students. We may establish starting times. If a student arrives after the test has started, they may be tested if sufficient time remains. Test administrators must actively monitor the testing room. They should verify that the student has access only to allowable materials. Administrators may not view or discuss individual test questions or responses unless specifically directed to do so by the test procedures. Reinforcing, reviewing, distributing testing strategies during the assessment is prohibited. Students must remain seated during testing except when they are receiving or returning authorized testing materials. Students are not allowed to talk while the test is in progress. And if a student completes the test, they may be allowed to leave the testing room or provided with an instructional activity. The test administrator they may allow brief breaks. We must ensure that students use the pause button for breaks, including lunch. To pause the test, students click on the pause button. The test administrator should assist students who need help pausing their test. Pausing a test logs the student out. A warning message displays after 20 minutes of test inactivity. Students who do not click the OK button within 60 seconds after this message appears are logged out. If they're logged out, they can resume a test, but they need to log back in using their test ticket and the session ID. Students must be monitored by a trained testing personnel and are not allowed to discuss any test content during breaks. Let's verify, just like STAR, we need to take this field test like if it were STAR, and if a student's taking a break in the restroom or during lunch, we need to monitor that they're not having conversations about the test during their breaks. So now I'm going to go over the standalone field test directions for, so I know that CTCs are going to go more in depth with their teachers when they train them. But I'm just going to go over it briefly because there are some things that are important that I need to point out. Test directions for the online administration have been written with the assumption that these students are already familiar with the interface by using the online practice set test and practice sets. So please, campuses make time for students to practice using the practice tests and the practice sets. Those are the same ones that we've been benchmarking with. Just make sure that you do not use the ones that are going to be coming up for 2020 for benchmark 2. For ELs, test administrators are allowed to translate, simplify, or repeat oral instructions as long as the substance of the directions is not changed. For students receiving designated supports, test administrators are permitted to modify the directions when needed. This statement right here is for students who are receiving basic transcribing. So when you train your staff, please point out if you have any students who have basic transcribing. And if you have any students that are having text-to-speech, the administrator may or are allowed to remind students that a do not read icon next to the selection of the test indicates that that section cannot be read, because the students may ask. For students receiving text-to-speech, content and language supports, the text within these supports will be read aloud. If a student arrives in your testing room and you do not have a student's test ticket, you need to notify your CTC so that they can get that information for you. We must read word for word the bold instructions with the word say. And here in these instructions, it just takes the administrator exactly through what they need to say. Like today, we're going to take the standalone field test. And as you notice, I highlighted here because it pauses and it asks the administrator to answer any questions before continuing. It verifies that everybody has a test ticket. And when they get the test ticket, they need to verify that their name and their birth date are correct on the test ticket. And if it's wrong, to please let them know, because they can log in as another student. And STAR, this is like a regular STAR test. Irregularities can happen, so make sure that we're following the procedures that are listed in this in these instructions. So we make sure that each test ticket is correct, and we tell them to look at their first name and the TSDS ID, and assist students if needed. Teachers or CTCs will be providing test administrators with a session ID, and we're going to ask students to type the session ID in the session ID field. So CTCs, remember that we need to give them the test ticket, but we also need to provide them with a session ID. The students will get to the "Is this you" page, and we must ask them to verify the information that is correct. If it's not correct, then they select no to return to the login page, and then they're going to notify the test administrator. And there's very specific boxes for specific students. Like this box right here is for students receiving text-to-speech. Please train your test administrators that if they have a student who has text-to-speech, they need to read that box. Here it states for students receiving speech-to-text for short or extended constructed responses in RLA, science, or social studies. So it's very important that test administrators know exactly what tests you're going to be providing. And if they're providing an RLA, science, or social studies for students receiving speech-to-text, they must read this. They have some notes, including test administrators to ensure that the microphone on the devices used for testing is turned on and configured properly before launching any test with short or extended constructed responses. I'm not going to read the say directions, but please go over these directions with your test administrator so they can know exactly where or what they have to read. For the end of course assessment, students are going to ask to fill out an honor statement. They'll read the honor statement, but they have stated that it is not the responsibility of the test administrator to check if the student has selected I agree on the honor statement. When the students have had the time to complete the honor statement, they can continue. And you continue with their instructions. Now here, it's a very important page. I believe it's page 16. Please, I highlighted it for you, and if you're going to use this highlighted version, it'd be great because it's very specific that test administrators for grades 3rd through 8th RLA, English 1 and 2, they must read this. If they're giving 3rd grade mathematics, the test administrator must read this. 3rd through 7 math, the test administrator must read only this box. Do not have them read everything. It's very specific to this grade, and it's very specific to this subject. And it goes on up to for 5th grade science, 8th grade social studies, and U.S. history. For students receiving content and language supports for any subject, we must read these SAY instructions to our students. We must remind students eligible for text-to-speech that they can use text-to-speech to listen to text in pop-ups and rollovers read aloud. The test administrator may need to indicate for students where to find the help tool that will show how to use a pop-up and rollovers throughout the test. And then they continue and reading the SAY instructions. And when a student asks a question that they're not permitted to answer, they can answer, I can't answer that for you, just do the best you can. These are some really important reminders that I'd like to read. Any student using text-to-speech or speech-to-text may be told to put on their headset. For lunch breaks, tell students to log out of the tests. For all other breaks, tell students to pause the test. Remember to actively monitor during the test. Administrators may assist students if they have trouble navigating through the assessment or need reminders of how to use the tools and the designated support. So we can assist them with that. As students complete the test, review the confirmation screen on the students' Your Results page and collect students' test tickets, scratch paper, graph paper, and reference material so that you can return them to the campus coordinator. Unauthorized viewing, we're going to treat it like STAR, right? Unauthorized viewing, discussion, duplication, or scoring of the secure test material is not permitted. After these English instructions, there's the Spanish instructions, which I'm not going to read, but I am going to ask you to remind the teachers that there's this little sheet at the end, Appendix A, for the online tools. They must use this chart below when a student has a question about one or more of the tools in the online system. If a student is having trouble locating a tool, pointing to the proper icon in the icon column below, if a student asks how a tool or button functions, you can read the information in the text column. The information in this column may be read verbatim, paraphrased, or clarified as needed. So it's good for the test administrators to be familiar with the icon, the name, and what it's for. Because if students need help with that during the test, they can provide the help. Okay. Any questions? I believe that concludes my part of the presentation. Okay, I'm going to monitor the chat either way. If now Ms. Karina Falcon will be taking over the rest of the presentation. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Let me make sure you can see my screen. Okay, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Now we're going to go ahead and summarize all the information from the instructions manual that we received for the standalone field test. So TEA did release some frequently asked questions, and our Region 1 shared different scenarios. So we're just going to go ahead and review it. So TA did release this. One of the first items that Ms. Gonzalez discussed was about eligible students. So this question's in the frequently asked. Number one, if an eligible student enrolls in a campus that is participating in the standalone field test after January 31st registration deadline, does that student need to take the field test? So if they enroll the following day, January 1st, 2nd, do they have to participate? Yes, they do, like Ms. Gonzalez had mentioned earlier. The student just will need to be added into TIDE, and we already know the process that is used here in our district. You submit your TIDE registration form, but we would go ahead and register the student, and we do have to ensure that the appropriate attributes are marked so he and she can take the standalone field test. Now, TA did continue and say that, of course, if an eligible student enrolls in a campus after we have administered the field test, you can provide a makeup session, but like Ms. Gonzalez mentioned, as a district, it has been decided that we're doing one-day participation. Middle schools and elementaries are taking this assessment on February 8th. And then, of course, high school is taking it on the following week on February 15th, and of course our Buell students as well on February 15th. So they're just letting us know that it is allowed, but we're not offering the makeups here for us. Just ensure that the students are registered, please, before they take the test. Another question that was sent out to us was, if an eligible student is enrolled in a campus that is participating in the standalone field test, but the student is receiving off-campus instruction. So this is for our VLP students, for our homebound students, and anyone in a disciplinary setting such as Buell, JJEP. Does that student need to take the field test? Yes, they do. These students are enrolled in a campus that will be participating in the standalone field test, and if they're eligible, they must take the test. That's why we have Dr. Carriaga here and Ms. Ramos, and we have our collegiate CTC and our Buell CTC. All our students need to take this assessment if they're enrolled in the campuses that were selected to participate in the standalone field test. So if you have anybody also on homebound, start thinking about those students, and if they would be able to meaningfully participate in this assessment, they should participate in this standalone field test. Treat it like a star, like Ms. Gonzalez said. Also, this is very important. You want to put a big star next to this. What score codes are appropriate for the standalone field test? So because this is a field test and the students, they're not going to receive any scores, it is not necessary for score code to record any score codes for the student. As such, the plan and manage testing report will not be available for the standalone test. So CTCs highlight this. Once the student submits the test, that's it. The teacher needs to ensure that when the students raise their hand that they're already in the last page. We need to confirm a system in submitting the test. Once they submit it, there's no further action required. And CTCs, there is not going to be a way for you to go into Tide and go count and go check how many students submitted a test. Unfortunately, TA is not providing this since it's a standalone. Not all the campuses are doing it. So please know that we are going to ask you how many kids took the test. So you would need to confirm with your test administrator, okay, you had 20 kids on your seating chart. Okay, did all the kids come in? Great. So you know that for those 20 kids were submitted their test. That's what the only way you would be able to know how many students actually took the assessment. So put a big post-it, because I know some people are going to ask, where do I see who submitted? There is no checking. There is no plan and manage report. So please tell your teachers that, because your test administrators, because it is going to be very crucial that they ensure that they submit the test. This question is part of some of the questions that we've asked before for TEA, and it's a very common question. So can a student that's taking the STAR online, but they have an oral administration, can the test administrator read them something instead of using text-to-speech? So think about the little ones. They qualified for text-to-speech. They have their headphones on, and then they raise their hand. Miss, can you read me what it says here? So can you do that? No. Students should be provided opportunities to complete all their online tutorials as well as practice tests prior to the test in order for them to become familiar with how to use the text-to-speech tool. Now, it does say required reference materials like your dictionary, anything that's from their designated supports, which might be a pop-up or a rollover that's not being read, or the composition, the prompt, that can be read aloud by the test administrator. So it's a little bit, no, you can't, but it depends what you ask. So you need to make sure that the test administrators understand what is allowed to be read and what is not allowed to be read over the student's shoulder, of course. And also keep in mind that in third grade, there's an exception, because we do have a lot of third graders that they don't qualify for an oral administration. But in third grade, we do know that if you test on paper or online, there is an accessibility feature that would allow the test administrator to provide reading assistance on the third grade math test. So it's only the math test that a third grader can ask for this assistance, even though they don't have the text-to-speech. And of course, the test administrator can read a word, a phrase, or a sentence in a test question. But of course, if they need the entire test read aloud, then you would need to consider, do they qualify for the criteria of an oral administration? So just keep in mind, text-to-speech, no, we shouldn't be reading it unless it's required reference materials, any designated supports that they may have, or they ask you for the prompt. Just make sure that your test administrators understand what to do in case the student calls them and asks them to read something on the screen. Now we move on to field test eligibility. So this is just a recap of what Ms. Gonzalez said, and we're going to have a couple of scenarios because it might be a little bit tricky when it comes to the elementaries. So we just want for everyone to understand that every student who is scheduled to take the Spanish test, the reading test in 3 through 5th grade in May, they will be participating in the Spanish 3 through 5 STAR reading test. So just know there's no Spanish field test for math or for science. So they're saying if your committee is already thinking or they've been taking Spanish reading tests in the benchmarks and that's what they're going to take in spring, they will be participating on the field test. The Spanish grades 3 through 5 STAR reading field test, they take precedence over the other standalones. And like Ms. Gonzalez mentioned, several of the elementary campuses have 2 rows. They got selected for, let's say, 4th grade math, or they got selected for 5th grade RLA in English. But everybody in PSJA is participating in the Spanish reading test. So, like we said, only one test for every student, and Spanish will always be first. That will be priority. That will take precedence. A student at a school who has chosen to participate in the standalone field test in Spanish in May will participate in the Spanish reading and not in any other. So that just reiterates what we were talking about. One test per student. So if they're taking Spanish, they must participate in the Spanish. Now, let's say they might be taking an English test. Well, then if your campus got selected for another assessment in English, then the student would participate. So I know that I've had questions they were asking me over here on the side. So think about your campus specifically. Think about who you're going to be including in your test plan. Who will you be testing? So here are some scenarios. And I know some of you already have the answers. So it's okay if you have the answers there. It's going to be good just in case you have any questions. So the first scenario is Robert is scheduled to take the Spanish grade 4 reading test in May, but Robert's school is not on the list. So what would we do with Robert? He needs to take the Spanish test, but on the list that they gave us from TA, his campus is not there. And what's the rule about Spanish? He will take the Spanish grade 4 reading test in February because TA already told us. If anybody's taking it in Spanish, they all need to participate because it's a very small number of students that take the Spanish test across the state of Texas. They're requiring everybody to participate in this field test. Okay, now we have Alicia. Alicia is scheduled to take the Spanish grade 5 reading test. And in English, she's taking the math, which is a lot of our kiddos. Spanish, reading, English, math. And her school was selected to participate in the grade 5 math. So her school is also chosen for math. So what do we do for Alicia? Some of you are going to have this scenario, a lot of you. They take the Spanish reading and then the English math, but you see that your school has to do the math also. So she only participates in the Spanish reading and not in the math because she should only be taking one field test. So here you can move on. You have different scenarios. You can read these on your own. This one talks about a student that's taking everything in English, Jamar, everything in English, and Jamar's school is not on the list. So if he's all English and you're not on the list, he's not going to participate. So you can move on here. Feel free to read all these tests. These are all some examples. I want you to go ahead and do right here. Number 5. This is a good one because it talks about a little scenario that we wanted to just, it's kind of like a yes or no or maybe. So number 5 is talking about Angelina. So Angelina's in 3rd grade and she's taking 3rd grade reading. And she's scheduled to take her May STAR test in English. Angelina needs large print. So she needs a large print paper test, a paper test. Angelina's school was selected to participate in the 3rd grade star reading. So what would we do with Angelina? Think about it. You might have some of these CTCs. She's taking 3rd grade in English. Her campus was chosen for 3rd grade English, but it says that Angelina needs a large print paper test on her IEP, maybe IAP. So Angelina should participate in the standalone field test if she can meaningfully do so. So that would be something that you would need to talk to the committee, ask them, we do have this assessment. Do you feel that she will perform well, maybe using the Zoom feature that we have on our platform? And if they feel that, yeah, she would do well with that feature, with the Zoom feature, then she should participate, because TA does need data to see if these are good field questions. Now, if the committee feels that it's not appropriate, she would really need her CCTV device to be able to even see the questions. If we put her online, she won't even be able to see it. She is probably going to put any response. It won't be true data. Then, of course, then she wouldn't be able to. So that is a committee decision. That is something that you can talk with your teachers. We wouldn't be able to make that decision. So it is your professional judgment on those. Now these are the high school ones. I did want to go over these high school ones. They're a little bit tricky. For high school, it's different. Rosalie took the English 1. She took English 1 in 2020, 2021, but she didn't pass her EOC. So she took the course last year and she failed the EOC. So Rosalie is enrolled in English 1. Yes, she will participate in this test because she's enrolled in English 1 this spring right now. She has specific questions, any scenarios about are they enrolled in the course for the different assessments that we've been administering? And just know the platform hasn't changed. We're still using Tide. We're still going to be creating sessions on our original TDS, which is for official state tests. And we do want our kids to continue practicing our release tests. So we all know that we always go to texasassessment.gov. We click on testing personnel. And this was adjusted a little bit because you're only going to be using certain features. You are going to be using Tide